Senate Republican leader. This is will be our weekly press update for you all. Today we're going to talk about what's been going on in the Transportation Committee around the budget and share an update with you on some of that progress that's happening, and take questions at the end. We can cover that topic or any others that are going around. I'm sure folks have a number of questions around what's happening upstairs. So I'm going to turn it over to Senator Farron in a minute, but you've no doubt heard about the fantastic report that's coming out of the Transportation Committee. I've been around here. This is now my 7th year here. I've seen a lot of different folks come and go that talk about finding sustainable ways to actually fix our roads and bridges. In fact, you even hear the governor quoting Governor Whitmer out of Michigan time after time in her budget proposals, we're going to fix the damn roads. Well, that's a lot of talk, not a lot of action. I'm actually proud to say and call Senator Farron a colleague here who put forward, with the help of his colleagues on the Transportation Committee, an actual solution to fixing the roads. And that's coming from the charge is being led by the Republicans. So with that, I'm happy to turn it over to Senator Farron.
Thank you, Senator Stewart. So for the folks that know, right, we've been talking about this for a long time about having sustainable funding for our roads and bridges and ports and airports. Everything across the board that has to do with infrastructure and transportation here in the state of Maine. And it usually comes down to, for a number of years, we relied on bonds. And that's the way that we did the capital portion of the transportation budget. There's been talk, and I give a lot of credit to Representative Wayne Perry out of Arundel. Wayne's been talking about the sales tax on motor vehicles for a number of years, and the Blue Ribbon Commission that was formed in 2020, that was one of the things that we really focused on, was alternative funding sources for our roads and bridges and infrastructure in the state of Maine. And so this time around, the governor did put forward some one-time money last budget, and also we had moved cascade money from the liquor fund, about $53 million, into the transportation budget. As we were moving forward this session, we heard more and more talk that $200 million that the governor had put forward was in jeopardy, and there was actually discussion centered around another bond with the amount of revenue that we have in the state. And I'm happy to say that not only were Republicans batting their eyelashes at that, but a number of Democrats as well that couldn't fathom that we were going to do bonding when we get the revenues that we have in front of us. So there was a bill, LD 713, in taxation, which took 50% of sales tax and put it to permanent funding for our infrastructure and capital projects. And that received a 12-to-1 vote out of the Taxation Committee. So we took that forward as we was voting out the transportation budget, and added parts related to vehicles as part of that to increase the funds some more. And happy to say that we got a 9-4 report out of the committee on that. Majority report with 3 Democrats on board and the Republicans. And I like to say now that we've kind of done that on the transportation side, so that will come out and go to the floor with the transportation budget, and hopefully on to the appropriators, which will turn to my colleague Senator Bennett, and the appropriators will have to start working their magic to make this, get it over the finish line, I guess is what we're looking for. So in a nutshell, that's where we are with the transportation budget. Senator Bennett?
Thank you, Senator Farron. Good to see all of you. We are really on the cusp of doing something dramatic and beneficial for the people of Maine. The structural imbalance in our highway fund is pervasive, and it is getting worse. We all know that the motor vehicle fuels tax is not going to do the job anymore. In fact, all the major automobile manufacturers have announced that by 2030 they're going to an electric fleet. They're making electric cars. We are going to an electrified fleet, and it's coming soon. It's high time for the state government to see ahead, just down the road a piece, to look at this future which is coming at us fast. And so the imbalance in the highway fund is only getting worse. In fact, we've been papering over it for a number of years now with moving money from the general fund to the highway fund, effectively by borrowing $100 million a year, which was part of the plan at the time, was just to borrow against the general fund for highway fund purposes. If you get really wonkish and go in the weeds, you'll learn about things like TransCap, where we're borrowing funds against the highway fund futures in order to fund highways. And then we're paying those back with general fund monies if they happen to be identifiable and available. So there's been a lot of covering over this problem for a long time. And I want to congratulate Senator Farron and Representative Perry, and indeed a bipartisan majority of the Transportation Committee, for refusing to let this moment pass, where we do have funding now. The state government, notwithstanding the aspirations of a lot of people in spending money, we have a record amount of money available this biennium. 10.8 to $11 billion is the current expectation. Just to bear that in mind, 2 years ago, the budget was $8.5 billion. A lot of this is pegged as one-time money, and so the proposals before us do a lot of one-time spending. But the highway fund is, I think, one element of state government funding that we all know is permanent. It's every year. It's perpetual. We need to keep our vital transportation infrastructure up to date. So missing this opportunity to actually solve the funding crisis in the highway fund long term would be a tragic mistake in this year when we can make this transition and make this transition to a source of funding that is going to last and grow over time. And I think relying less and less on the traditional source of the highway fund, which is the motor vehicle fuels tax, and onto the sales tax on vehicles, vehicle parts, is going to pay dividends for Mainers for years to come. And I just want to say this is a really good move for the people of Maine. That's about all I have to say, and would be delighted to answer any questions.
I just wanted to follow up on a couple points that Senator Bennett made. Specifically, I think if you ask people around the state of Maine that the sales tax on motor vehicles is the ultimate use tax. You buy a vehicle, you use it on our roads. And as we do move towards these EV vehicles, one of the things we've been struggling about is how to spread that and have those vehicles pay their share of the use. And the sales tax piece seems to just click right into that as the ultimate use tax for vehicles on our infrastructure in the state of Maine. I'll also say, that there's another key component to this. Now the transportation budget, right, has to go through the process. It has to have a 2/3 vote by the time we get out of here at the end of June to avoid a partial state shutdown. Commissioner Van Note talked during the hearings that we were having on the transportation budget about that partial state shutdown and what that would look like if we're not successful as a legislature in passing the transportation budget. Think of limited ferry service over the 4th of July and things of that nature. So the legislature and the appropriators, we all have to do our job now with this and I keep saying it, bipartisan budget, because there is real implications for the citizens of the state of Maine for us to do our work by the time we get out of here to pass that transportation budget.
Okay, happy to answer any questions. We can start with this subject first and then jump into some others here with the time we've got left. Yep.
What's your read on the Appropriations Committee? I mean, do you think that this will get through that process, or have you heard from Dem leadership? Are they staunchly opposed to this?
I think that this is something which all legislators are seriously looking at, and including members of the Appropriations Committee, both Democrats, Republicans, and trying to see what the implications are for this action. I was giving a speech earlier today, maybe some of you heard about the dysfunction of the legislature. I have to say that this is actually contrary to the notions I put forward in that speech, because this is the way it's supposed to work, right? The Taxation Committee took a bill from a rank-and-file legislator that said, let's start looking ahead a bit, 50% of the tax on vehicles, right? 12-to-1 report. It was nearly unanimous. It goes to the Transportation Committee. The Transportation Committee responds in a bipartisan way in embracing this idea, knowing the details and expanding on it a bit with the parts tax. Now, because of the financial insolvency of the Highway Fund, and I will say that it is financially insolvent, we can't hide the fact that the Highway Fund and the Appropriations Fund, the General Fund, are now intermixed. And so this budget, that the Highway Fund budget, will naturally, once it goes through the Legislature, through the House, through the Senate, all but final enactment, will go to the appropriations table. And it's there, I think, that we're going to get really granular about what this means and how to accommodate it with a lot of other expressions of and aspirations and desires by people on both sides of the aisle, and we'll get into it there. But I think this marker is such an important one to have laid down, which is done in a bipartisan fashion, which is let's fix this Highway Fund insolvency. And so I got a little bit away from your question, but
I mean, do you expect Republicans would go to the mat on this and deprive a two-thirds vote on the overall budget?
well,
Do you feel that strongly?
this is, I think you have it wrong, with all respect. This is a two-thirds vote. Democrats and Republicans together have come forward and said, let's fix this problem. The Highway Fund ultimately will need the Highway budget needs a two-thirds vote. The path to a two-thirds vote has been laid out by this vote out of transportation. I would hate to see the Democrats on a partisan basis say, and I don't think they'll go there because it doesn't make sense, which would be, let's, on a partisan basis, unwind this salvation for the Highway Fund, which has been laid out on a bipartisan basis for biennia to come. And so I can't imagine that would be the outcome. I think it's great news that this is proceeding on a bipartisan two-thirds basis. And so I think the essence of this, the details may vary a little bit around the edges, but I think the essence of what the Transportation Committee voted and that forward-looking element is going to be something that is now reality, and we're going to have to embrace it.
Who else has a question? Yep, go ahead. Yep.
Senator Bennett.
Yes.
Just follow on Randy's question. So, but realistically, I mean, how likely is this to be able that you can pull this together in the next week and a half? You're still aiming to adjourn by the 21st, 22nd?
Where there's a will, there's a way. I can see the way forward, but it's going to involve some late nights and a lot of work. But yeah, we can do that. I also, frankly, worry about all the other bills that are very slowly working their way through the process too. So it's and I don't know how we're going to accommodate all of them. But on the budget, I think we know what priorities exist in both caucuses and among the general public, and so I think we just need to kind of get a little bit more granular about how to accommodate.
I'd say, too, on the issue of adjournment, that the only indication that I've received from the other leader in the Senate is that we're still adjourning on the 21st. So that is still the game plan as far as I'm aware of it. He's yet to indicate something other than that. I hear some rumblings down in the House that they might not have their act together enough to be able to meet that deadline, but I anticipate we'll pass an adjournment order on the 21st down in the Senate. Who else has a question? Hang on. Anybody else besides Randy? Okay, we'll go back to Randy.
Just wanted a broad update on the broader budget discussions. I'm noticing a lot of work sessions of AFA getting canceled, and we're quickly approaching the 21st. Can you update us on where things stand? I mean,
well, I was supposed to be in voting 2:15. We were scheduled to go in and vote some lines in on the budget. So I mean, it's a calendar and clock issue now. When the Senate and the House are kept in session, in all hours, it's really hard to get a quorum necessary to vote on lines. And so it's just the only reason it's been canceled is because of just the workflows in the chambers.
And I'll have to say, to add to that The issue is not actually in the Senate there; it's more in the House. I did have a point to touch base with President Jackson about this last week, and he and I are both pulling our hair out in frustration at what's happening and the bad management that's going on down in the House, because it's causing this sort of friction where you can't get a quorum and you can't get some of these meetings that have been scheduled off the ground, and it's going to create this backlog. But we're going to keep pushing on the Senate side when we get a bill that's a divided report, we vote on it. If there's an amendment that we're waiting for, that's one thing. But what I've seen from down in the House is anything that's controversial, it's table, and let's use this as leverage and that, and play this game and that. And we're not doing that down here. We're taking things up as we get them, and we're moving things along. And I think that's the spirit that you're going to continue to see as we charge forward towards adjournment. Other questions? Anybody in the back row? Yep.
Senator, we covered a press conference actually in this room earlier today about some various bills with gun control, 72-hour waiting period, background checks, etc. Do you or your colleagues have any comment about that? Anything you want to react to?
I doubt my colleagues will be very supportive of any of those measures. We'll wait and see what the committee reports look like as they come out to the Senate. I know that Senator Harrington answered some questions about that earlier today. If you want to jump in and share your thoughts on any of those bills, I don't know if you have any. I'm putting you on the spot, but that would be the general position.
Which bill specifically?
There's actually 4 here. Ensure a prohibited person from not possessing firearms. Another one for a 72-hour waiting period, universal background checks, the prevention of semi-automatic firearms from being converted into military-grade weapons. There's a bunch of them.
So I think with a lot of these proposals, they dramatically go after law-abiding gun owners, and I think that we need to be focusing on the real issue at hand, and that is keeping guns out of the hands of criminals. And we had a great opportunity to do that this morning with LD 714, and in a largely partisan manner, that bill was shot down. But constantly I'm on the Criminal Justice Committee. We hear this term "iron pipeline," referring to guns being taken from Maine, used in crimes in New York. Well, with Maine's very liberal Good Samaritan statutes, some of the most liberal in the country, now law enforcement is unable to prosecute felons in possession of a firearm at these scenes. And we know disproportionately these guns are going to end up out of state being used in violent crimes. And so I think we need to focus on those pieces of legislation and leave law-abiding gun owners alone.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. That the big hypocrisy here being that these same folks who are pushing those bills are voting against the bill that would actually put people behind bars who are possessing guns illegally, but not if they're on drugs. I mean, that's the hypocrisy that we're talking about here.